Hi everyone. Thank you for joining the E4M MarTech webinar. We had our first webinar on 27th on the future of AI in marketing. The field is so dynamic that you know as we look ahead to our other webinars, the topics keep changing. The topics keep renewing themselves. A lot of things are challenging MarTech as we know today. There is a decline of uh, you know third party cookies. Marketers have to now go to first party cookies. Um, Google Chrome will be phasing them out, the end of this year. Then there's this whole debate around predictive analysis versus privacy, wherein there are a lot of cases globally going against generative AI. Um, then there are around 14,000 MarTech tools. So marketers don't know which ones to select in comparison to only around 14 tools back in 2011. So the landscape is changing as fast as one could possibly imagine. Yesterday, I was doing an interview with a MarTech influencer, Mr. Bindra, and he said, the revolution that we are seeing is from madmen to AI men. There was a there was a thing back in 1960s when there were advertisement men all over Manhattan. Then there were digital marketers, and now we'll have AI marketers. Uh, I welcome all of you. I have Mr. Abraham Allapat, who is president and group head of marketing for Thomas Cook. I have Miss Mayuri Kango. She's the head of AI and MarTech at Google. I have Mr. Sudhanshu Tripathi, who is the CMO of QuickHeal. And I'm Mr. Chandan Mukherjee, director and head of marketing, Nestle. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Uh, I'll start with you, Mr. Mukherjee, and just as opening remarks. What does this term surviving the MarTech revolution actually mean to marketers today?
Well, thank you, Bridge, for having me in this program. And of course, a very, very interesting topic, very, very relevant topic for marketers of today. Well, marketing technology is actually, the fusion of marketing strategies and technology tools which enable marketers to execute and analyze and optimize campaigns at scale. So what it means essentially is that, when marketing started, of course, it had a very human sort of an outlook. It still remains, people at the center of all marketing, but that's now enabled much more through the entire funnel, through using data, technology, automation, AI, personalization, and using all kinds of digital infrastructure of modern marketing operations to sort of create an ecosystem from where you can understand and put to use all this to be able to better serve your consumer or your customer. If you're not better serving your consumer or your customer, and of course, getting the right kind of brand metrics or the right kind of ROI, then obviously the whole ecosystem does not work. And this ecosystem is, of course, quite complex with more and more tools. You've just said, 14,000 different tools. It's very, very important to also understand, what is the purpose of these tools? What is the use of these tools? And what are we trying to drive? Or what are the outcomes that we are trying to drive? So therefore, the whole martech piece is about being still very outcome driven, and if you are not that, then you can easily stray in this sort of an area where there are so many different opportunities, there's so many different tools. uh, if you are clear on what your purpose is, if you're clear on what your efficiency goals are, if you're using, intelligent, scalable, personalized consumer engagement through the right kind of tools, it's very, very sort of, beneficial for marketers of today. And of course, digital marketing cannot really survive without it in today's world as well. So therefore, very integral to all our thinking and all our processes, but very important to be focused on what your objectives are and what your outcomes are so that you can make the most out of this entire ecosystem.
Absolutely. It's today there's so many number of tools. It's like finding a needle in the haystack, the right tool, which you should use. I'll come to you, Abraham. As somebody who is leading, marketing, at a company which I'm sure would have a lot of marketers working under you, what do you think are the challenges, those people are facing, and marketers generally across the industry are facing in terms of, trying to adapt to new tools? And I'll come to the privacy part of it, the intersection of DPDP, the whole Gen AI stealing data part of it. But right now, my question is, what are the challenges they are facing in terms of adopting to these tools?
Hi, Bridge, and thanks to the E4M team for having me. Fantastic panel and a great topic as well. I think, Bridge, I'll start the answer to your question with referring to something that you brought up, which is the Mad Men era, right? If you look at the advertising marketing ecosystem right up till the 90s, Mad Men era included, it was really more about the art than the science, right? It was the gut feel and the creativity and all that that pretty much epitomized the marketing folks from, let's say, the finance folks, as a classic paradox, right? A difference. But if you look at what has happened, especially over the last 10 years, and is definitely going to happen going forward, is that this has become more about the science. There's so much data. This often used thing that data is the new oil. Today, marketing is so driven by data, both from the people, the marketers themselves. The tools, of course, are aiding that and making that availability of data that much more easy and prevalent. And therefore, the expectations of marketers have become less about these art of marketing or the creativity aspects that epitomized marketing earlier. Today, it's more about data, down to the last decimal, and it's become really a very metrics-led, sort of domain. And to that extent, it's become very similar in some sense to the finance domain, in terms of the kind of data that you need to even make a business case for a marketing investment today. So I think that's the single biggest change that more experienced marketers have to deal with, which is that this is a completely different ecosystem and expectation set, both from management to boards at the other level, and from even, let's say, an analyst call that you have to get into to explain a marketing campaign. Earlier, you could just, to some extent, explain it is different, it's creative, it's clutter breaking, etc. Today, you actually have to explain what that marketing dollar is doing and have the data to back it. I think to me, this is the single big change, and therefore there's a set of complexities that come with it. One is what are the tools that are going to give me data that can back
Yeah.
this, and to a large extent, a lot of what we do still remains inattributable, right down to the rupee level. So I think a lot of what marketers have to do today is to really still not lose the soul of creativity and art, which is, to my mind, still what distinguishes marketers from everybody else. But at the same time, be able to carry enough data and objectivity to conversations at every level, from the board, from the CEO, CXO, CFO level, and even analysts if they have to explain it. And I think that to me is the single big challenge. And of course, there are a lot of sub challenges within that.
Thank you. I'll take a strand from that thought and put that question to both Mayuri, you, and Sudhanshu. And first, Sudhanshu ji, I was reading a fact: 80% marketers today globally are still facing a challenge to tell their bosses what is the ROI of the campaigns that they're creating. And especially, with so much data which is coming in, it is very difficult. Earlier you could still, as Mr. Alapat said, you could still put it on the creativity side of things. But now that there is a lot of data and you exactly know where your consumer is coming from, um, your bosses expect you to find the ROI in it. So how do you try and manage to find that? First from the brand point of view, and then I'll come to Mayuri, you, from a solutions provider point of view.
So, Briz, I think that's a question all of us here would have faced, and we face it on a very regular kind of basis. To the extent, very recent example, we're all in the budgeting phase. We're in the budgeting phase. And even to the extent that the ATL campaigns, where we are taking over TV, print, etc., people are expecting, okay, what is the ROI? And my CFO friends, they're more keen to make it milestone-based unlocks. Okay, you do this, you unlock additional budget. You do once you achieve that particular goal, do something else, because yeah, it all boils down to data and it's available in plenty. Now, let me try to relate it to the landscape, how it's changing on the MarTech side, and then try to answer your question. Now, for us, yes, that has been a journey, but that's also an opportunity because automation is not new. So, for example, if you look at last 10 years, we have been on that journey. The disruption happened with, suppose, the Gen AI kind of coming on board, where we saw everything kind of being taken over, especially on the content creation, image creation, videos, etc., happening on an kind of autonomous and way, and automation happening at scale. Now that's why it has become a conversation, because MarTech has been that vehicle where we have been looking at aiding marketeers do what they do best, and the MarTech becomes that enabling layer for the team and the business and the brand to kind of do what they want to do. Now, suddenly the conversation have changed, where we are having conversation about hiring AI before you hire a human, or AI agents now being treated as one of your own teammates. And if we have not heard that, I think those will be conversation, and especially when it comes to ROI goes in terms of investment in tools, investment in your teams, and those are conversations. So the business case approval will only happen if you prove that AI would not be able to do it, and I need a human being. And that is how and where we are headed. And that also boils down to how do we kind of navigate this particular journey, because the barrier to entry in the field of marketing also has gone down. For example, even my CFO today can write an ad, uh, and now I think all of us would have experience wherein you get a lot of advice from non-marketeers that this could be done better, or this is an idea which is fresh out of head. Why don't you do it? And we would always have struggled to push back, because uh, again, they are not the one who need to kind of defend the ROI when it comes to the idea being executed, because ideas come in plenty. It's more about how do you kind of filter out the best one and then take it to the outcome and deliver it. And that is where the ROI conversation kind of happen. But good part is that yes, there is a lot of data available. And I think as Abraham kind of talked about, if we are able to make sense of what we want and we have crystal kind of clarity in terms of what we are looking at, and we have the ability to filter the right data, creating that business case and ROI kind of question becomes easy, and thanks to all the tools available. Uh, Now, one thing before I kind of put for my point is uh, it has created a clutter. You talked about 14,000 kind of tools being available, but it also is an opportunity for smaller brands, wherein I see that that has democratized the MarTech per se. Now, that was just a play for the big brands with deep pockets. Now, suddenly, even the smaller brands can tinker with, they have tools available. And if not, they can create some of their own to automate processes in the backend and try to make sense of the data, which is coming in plenty from various sources. That's I think, will be my take on ROI and how the community is taking up, and specifically in my case is how we are driving it internally.
Mayuri, while I'll still put that same question to you, in addition to that is, and which I also mentioned right at the start of this webinar, is that, there's a huge phase out of third-party cookies, and now, the incoming streams of data will be very difficult to access, for marketers. And, basis this situation, the challenge increases. So, as somebody who is at a solutions provider point of view, what do you think of it? What do you make of it? What are the new tools that marketers can go to generate that sort of data which third-party cookies were providing?
So I think there has been enough and more conversation in the ecosystem about cookies and privacy and data. And I think a lot of marketers are aware of it. The reason, actually, I'm going to go back a little bit. The reason we talk about 14,000 tools and we talk about the increased pressure on marketing ROI, despite having so much data, actually for me boils down to a very simple thing, that not all data is meaningful data, right? And the reason all data is not meaningful data today is because how we have collected that data, how we have stored that data, or how we have actually worked on that data to give us something meaningful is purely at a, I would say, even at a nascent stage. We're not even crawling with that yet, right? Because data today, if you think about the challenges, every conversation I've had with a client over the last 3 or 4 years has been about how do I stitch my data, my CRM data, to my media data, to my store data. They're all sitting in completely different silos. They don't have a single identifier. The ability to connect the dots between all your consumers is almost impossible to bridge in the way the data is sitting today. So I think the first biggest thing, especially in India, that we'll have to traverse is how do we stitch the data infrastructure together, right? And with everything that is happening in the cookie-less world that we are talking about today, a lot of marketers do understand and have a lot of first-party data. I think if we can all put science to integrating that data in maybe a CDP or other MarTech technologies that allow you to stitch consumer journeys so that you can make sense of the data that you're getting, you will then be able to action that data, whether it is on paid media, whether it is on owned media, to make informed decisions, so that a marketer, when 14,000 tools are thrown at them, they know which tool makes sense for what they are trying to do. Right now, the noise is what is actually stopping us from doing the real integral hard work, because all the tools and technologies, I honestly think right now there's a lot of glitter. What we need is genuine hardworking technology that's going to do a lot of the grunt work for the AI to do its job. AI is going to be as good as the signals that the AI works on, right? So any AI technology today, if you don't provide it good, clean data that makes sense for your business, the outcome is not going to give you the ROI that you want. So I think that fundamental work needs to go in for most marketers today in the system.
I'll come back to you, Mr. Mukherjee. A lot of young marketers are, watching this. Right now, we have around 150 people who are viewing this. And about 30% are young, marketers there. My question is, we are talking about challenges, we are talking about the skills that are needed. What is the real impact in teams? Since you're heading, one of the perhaps one of the largest marketing teams, uh, what are the real challenges that you are facing, that people working under you are facing, and how are the teams transforming in terms of as a response to this smart tech revolution?
Well, so any activity of this kind, any kind of MarTech revolution, any kind of big sort of paradigm shift, of course, has people at the heart of it, and that's how we view it. That it has to be kind of led by people, driven by people, and sort of handled by people. So if you look at the way it impacts people, is first of all getting the right talent is something which is very, very important. Talent who can make sense of all this data, talent who can work towards stitching and knitting all this data, talent which can understand what's the purpose, the use of the data, to what end and to what outcomes. And I think that's very, very integral. So talent remains very, very important in this whole journey. Second is also to kind of get into the mindset of using more data. So if you look at brand management, or if you look at the way we market it and so on, uh, it's now got infused with much more data. So you are looking at not just kind of a campaign, you are looking at also trying to manage the journey. So that's a big shift in terms of from campaigns to journey. If you look at content, the big shift is not about generating content, developing content, but also having the right kind of smart content and the right kind of smart contextual content. So that's again a little bit of a shift in the way you operate, the way you think, the way you build brands, the way you kind of work through the entire ecosystem. And the third major area is about how do you integrate. Today, for example, in FMCG, and of course, MarTech behaves a little differently in different industry sectors as well. If you look at retail or e-commerce, it behaves a little bit differently compared to, let's say, FMCG and maybe, other sectors like auto or travel or finance, whatever else. The way we look at it in terms of FMCG is that, we through our people and through thinking with a very outcome-based purpose or very outcome-based objective or what are we trying to drive and what's the needle that we're trying to move, we have kind of stitched it all together to put all the data into one place and then trying to see how we can knit all that and use the right analytics to be able to use the right outcomes. Now a lot of the data actually sits in different kind of systems in different gardens, different units, and they're not necessarily joined together. While unification of data is a big goal, and there are different technologies, for example, we've been also working and looking at certain consumer data platforms or CDPs to try and see how you can unify some of that data and how can you then use it to run more personalized campaigns, which could be linked to loyalty building, which could be linked to messaging or engagement or whatever it is. It's all about trying to see how you can connect more and more dots. I would say only 10 to 20% of dots are connected. I would still think that, a large proportion of dots still require a lot of connection. Things like attribution you can maybe do within a particular silo. But if you're looking at, across the entire journey and how do you really attribute and how do you really look at, the right outcome, not a last click attribution, but more a holistic view of attribution, I think still there's an evolution that has to come in the way MarTech is able to also help and aid marketeers. There's an evolution in the way AI has to also, come up and sharpen itself. I think we are on a journey there itself. A lot of AI has been much better than what it was, let's say, a year ago. And maybe in the year to come, it will again sharpen itself and learn more and get there. So it's a journey of trying to see, how you can manage the consumer one side and the people journey on the other side to be able to make the most sense of all this and not keep the tools at the front of it, but really outcomes at the front of it. What is it that we're trying to drive? So if you're trying to automate something, and there are many different kinds of, automation tools available, and they could help you for promotions or seasonal offers or cross-brand journeys or integrating with, quick commerce or e-commerce platforms or whatever it is, or even social listening and all of that, and how do you really work on social campaigns or omni-channel, and so on. I think a lot of it is getting linked increasingly, but there's still a long way ahead for us in the front.
So, one thing I would want to, so I think your video is stuck, uh, uh, Mr. Mukherjee, or I think it's at my end. If you could just turn it off and on again. Uh, uh, on that strand of thought, Abraham, Mr. Mukherjee said data right now is in, different packs. And hence, while it becomes necessary to find the right stack to actually put all that data into, one mainframe system and actually make sense of it, it also becomes very difficult because there is data pouring in from all ends. And as a marketer, how do you actually cater to that data? How do you find, one is how do you find the right stack, to measure that data and to put it to use? And second is, how do you find the right data to reach the right people?
It's a big question, Bridge. I'll give it a good stab. One, I'll pick up what Mayuri spoke about. One is this. To me, right now, there's a glut of data. There's so much data coming, and there's more data if you want it. So I think the problem right now is you can actually get paralyzed by too much data. Because at every level, if you start looking at the data, you'll be too scared to even sometimes take a decision. So to my mind, I think what's important, and I'm just linking this to the earlier question about teams as well. My constant message to the team is look at the signals that matter. Don't get distracted by anything else. Because if the goal is to say, listen, these are your resources, which is the marketing buck in whatever form, and you've got clearly defined business goals, and you've got, let's say, in our case, passenger count as a sort of retail transaction equivalent. Those are the two parameters of growth, right? Which is a top line and a base for the top line growth. And of course, profitability at a margin level. Let's focus on what's giving us the real business result, number one, because in a lot of what we do, there's a short game and a long game. The short game are the tacticals, ROI, lead generation campaign kind of thing. That's the bread and butter of the business. There's also the long game, which is about brand building, loyalty, stuff like that, right? And you have to do some of the things that aren't immediately attributable there, not even in the short term, may not even be in a quarter. So I think the key is to, if you get too caught in the data and saying, listen, every rupee I spend, am I getting, 3 rupees back, kind of almost a trader kind of mentality. The risk is that it's only short game, right? You will absolutely stay away from some of the slightly riskier, maybe to some extent, what would be called madmen kind of ventures. And I think the what's increasingly the challenge for marketers is because you're being asked so much data and there's so much data available. At the same time, you're conscious as a marketer that you can get stuck in the tactical short game format. Is that you must constantly bring the conversation to saying, listen, X of my resources is the short game, and that's measurable ROI, short tactical kind of thing. But I've also got the long game, and there's a different set of data points for those, right? That might be about repeat ratios, that might be about lifetime realization, and so on, average ticket size, repeat on repeats, and so on. But the point is really for each business, and of course, these vary depending on the category you are, is to focus on the data points that matter, keep them in two different sets of short term and long term, and not get distracted by a lot of the other data points that come. Yes, meaning in terms of saying, okay, listen, can I be sharper in terms of reaching the right kind of customer base or cohorts, etc., especially as we move into a cookieless world. I think, to my sense, it's a lot more of the genuine traditional marketing theory that's coming into play, right? It's really about more reach, more conversations, more relationships, and less dependent on third-party cookies and things that we, in some sense, got addicted to in the past. So, in a way, I think that's going back to some traditional marketing, and I think that's really what increasingly we'll have to play with, the interplay between lot of technology and a lot of tools and a lot of requirement of data to convince people to make an investment in short play and long play. And two is the ability to, at the same time, uh, rebuild the business almost in a new environment, which is not dependent on third-party cookies.
Rightly said. Mr. Tripathi, I'll come to you. When I put Quick Heal into perspective, more of what you do is, comes out in B2B marketing. A lot of businesses would want to, safeguard themselves from cyber attacks. We saw what happened with WazirX. I mean, even my money stuck. So a lot of people's money is stuck there. Um, you know, and there, when it comes to B2B marketing, the data sets are completely different. The data channels are completely different. The way omni-channel is used is completely different. So can you give a perspective as to how it is working right now and what are the challenges you are facing when it comes to B2B marketing and reaching out to companies who would actually want to use, data privacy, via softwares like yours?
Yes, Bridge, I think let me give a little bit perspective about what Quick Heal does. So Quick Heal is a cybersecurity solution provider that has both retail as well as enterprise presence. The retail business is Quick Heal. For last 3 decades, we service customers through different AV products. And recently, we have launched a new category called anti-fraud with all the fraud menace going across. Now, the enterprise brand that we have is Securite. And with that, kind of all the aspects that you talked about come into play, wherein, see, with the cookies being phased out and all those developments happening, there is a rush for data, first-party data, that all the brands are putting across. But what in turn ends up happening is the exposure for the companies increases. And when I say exposure, it's more from the threats, data breaches, and all those kind of bad things which can happen to a brand kind of increases exponentially. Now, when that is the scenario, we have observed that companies become little conservative, and especially with the compliance layer of privacy coming in force with the DPDP in India, brands have to go back and think, and they'll be forced to minimize data, because that's even what the law kind of preaches, wherein you only take what is required. Now, with all of that in place, we need to be kind of cognizant that as a brand which is selling cybersecurity, and we are the custodian of cybersecurity for the brands that we service, we ourselves need to be cognizant of how much do we collect and what is necessary. So that is where kind of the dilemma is, that how much data do we collect? Because if you look at the kind of software, uh, AV products or any cybersecurity product sits at the root of all the systems which are there. So literally, you have access to all the systems in place. But that being with the right intent, so we do not kind of collect any data for the users for marketing perspective. But those system level data gets collected to ensure that uh, the application, and which are all AI native. AI might be kind of a new thing for uh, other industries, but for cybersecurity, the entire industry has been AI native for last so many decades. And with Gen AI coming, there's a rapid kind of being kind of created. But that is where it sets the kind of bridge wherein we do not collect any data which is not to be collected. Consent kind of plays primary role here, and the basic kind of principle stays true, whether it is B2B or B2C. There is enough data that is there for us to reach out to the brands, and that is what we use. We collect signals from various other kind of platforms where we are doing marketing, whether on different other third-party platforms, and that will increasingly become difficult as the cookies go off. And that is where we have started looking inwards to set up our own platforms wherein we have the right data sets. And we kind of continue to use platforms like LinkedIn, etc., which act as an enabler for giving us the right triggers, so we can kind of create kind of right approach and campaigns around reaching out to brands.
Thank you, Mr. Tripathi, for giving that perspective. Mayuri, I'll come to you. Uh, ecosystems are becoming increasingly modular. Uh, how is Google, helping brands integrate fragmented martech stacks? What's your advice to teams struggling with platform interoperability and ROI measurement, as a POV from Google?
Yeah, so this is actually a part of my day-to-day job, right? This is what me and my team actually work with a lot of clients on how to make the right choices when it comes to some of these technologies that are out there. I think understanding the source of those technologies and their ability to be built upon or built with is very important, right? So it's important to understand the data infrastructure that company plans to have in the long term and the short term, right? And if there are legacy systems, what is the use of those legacy systems? Will the company continue to use those legacy systems? And in that case, what are those providers? What are those solutions that can work seamlessly with existing maybe legacy systems that a brand may or may not be able to get off of, but at the same time be able to integrate seamlessly into the more newer, more modular ecosystems, whether it is from campaign management perspective, whether it is from data automation perspective, or CRM or chatbots, or whatever it is that the use case that might be. So how are you using the bridge technologies that connect these two? And are those technologies fast moving, agile, and privacy safe? I think those are some of the considerations I work day to day with all my partners to make some of those choices with. Now, if you think about how we as Google have been operating, most of the changes in the AI landscape for us have been primarily, if you think about it, in 4 or 5 buckets, right? The first and foremost, and that goes actually for all platforms, AI and MarTech is being applied to how do we automate or how do we optimize the media and the ROI that that media gives to advertisers, right? So a lot of Google products are being built around that. So if you think about what Google has been talking in the marketplace, which has been Performance Max or Demand Gen, has been how do you use that? And the reason Google has been able to do that is there is a lot of AI that has been built, which is about enhanced targeting and audience discovery based on the data signals that it gets, right? And as a result, what actually happens is this: the magic happens when you're also able to use the AI to automate creative generation and optimization. So it's about stitching all of this, and then how do you improve measurement and attribution? AI actually powers a lot more sophisticated attribution models, right? Such as data driven attribution that you see in some of our products like GA4 or even outside of it. And I think taking those touch points and making conversion models in a cookieless world that talk about attribution in the right way is what some of the things that we are actually working with. And think if you think about it, almost 80% of all advertisers, irrespective of size, are working on some of those AI technologies with us.
Thank you so much for giving that perspective, Mr. Mukherjee. So now I'll head into a section where there's more personalized questions. Mr. Mukherjee, my question to you is with over 600 million users in India now, and a digital landscape that spans about 22 languages, and Nestle is a very big brand. How is Nestle actually using MarTech to transform consumer data into, hyper local real-time engagement? And not just in metros, but also in tier 2 and 3 cities. Could you share an example where, data intelligence directly shaped a campaign or product strategy at scale? I know it is a bit off topic, but I would want that insight.
Sure, sure. So, like I said, there are different industries who use maybe our MarTech in slightly different ways. If you look at the FMCG industry, a very large proportion of our sales still in FMCG comes from the offline world in regular retail stores, kirana stores, supermarkets, modern trade, whatever it is. You have, a certain proportion, maybe a smaller proportion coming from e-commerce and quick commerce and all of that. But the consumer with the 600 million or more consumers, digital is a place where people are spending a number of hours in a day. And therefore, digital engagement and looking at people from a human perspective as well as from a platform perspective of where they're spending their time and all of that is very, very important. So if you look at a brand like Maggie, for example, which has got a very big footprint in the country, we don't look at one particular consumer. We, of course, look at different kinds of segments and cohorts and different ways in which we dissect the consumer. So if you look at the more, let us say, the more urban, the large city consumer or the younger consumer over there, we of course understand the entire digital journey. We look at how do we integrate online, offline. So we do a lot of cross-screen, work trying to understand the entire ecosystem that the consumer is sort of, engaged with. And of course, with certain amount of data, we don't own necessarily in FMCG the last mile interaction of the consumer. So, in that sense of the term, our consumer relationship at the last mile is not necessarily owned by us. You might be buying, let us say, Nescafe, 20 times in the year as an example, but we will not know you, and you will also not, have exact data about yourself fitted in there unless we collect that data, more specifically and all of that. We do have, of course, certain first party data that we use in certain categories where it's of value, where it's of interest, where we can use the data to drive meaningful outcomes. And that is what we do over there. But we use the entire ecosystem of course, looking at all the big platforms and trying to see how we can get the right kind of data about the consumer. And then, let us say, you understand a bit more, and then you link them into certain other platforms where it makes sense and how you can connect some of the data that we collect from one of the platforms and then try and see how we can connect with that consumer on another platform through e-commerce or quick commerce and stuff like that. And those are some of the work that we have been doing using a large number of different kinds of technologies. If you look at, of course, the rural and the smaller town consumer, then of course it's a wider ecosystem out there. You do have, of course, a lot of digital play, but you also have a lot of offline play. And that's where we try and see how we can use some of the data about, more specific social data or more specific, also data using or data for content creation, content distribution, and use that to kind of, create and store and distribute certain branded content. We do also use certain MarTech tools to even discover influencers in the right way, across different town tiers and try to see, their engagement. And all of that, we're increasingly experimenting also to see how we can manage influencer campaigns and, measure ROI much better using some of the more advanced tools out there. There are, of course, more and more interplays towards a CDP. We don't have a full-blown CDP at the moment, but there are pieces and areas of data that we sort of, collect for different purposes, use different kinds of marketing automation tools, leverage the entire e-com ecosystem, leverage a lot of AI and other kinds of, Gen AI and all of that for some of our content, for social and other kinds of content. Of course, we do use certain ad tech and campaign management tools, in different places and so on. So it's really the full ecosystem, and the way we go about it is understand, what do we really want to drive, what makes sense, how do we integrate online and offline. And like I was talking about the teams part of it, today a marketeer has to really collaborate with 5 or 10 different other people, which was, of course, marketing is a lot about collaborating with different people, but that collaboration circle and that circle has become much wider, much longer, much more connected and so on. So that's how we really see what we could potentially do. We use a lot of messaging engagement, through messaging services and all of that, in other parts of the world where we have much more sort of, use of email and all of that. We don't use that so much here. But in certain categories and certain product categories, we use a lot of email marketing and all that in other parts of the world, where a lot of that is automated and very much uses MarTech at the heart of it. We have a small D2C experiment also going on where, of course, we try to, you know, deliver and see how we could use MarTech in a much more seamless way across different platforms and so on. So it's really, using or figuring out what the objectives are, how can we look at it in an integrated manner, and how can we connect different dots? Because our consumer does not only reside on digital or does not only reside online or offline, it's really an interconnected ecosystem that we are really looking at.
Absolutely. On that note, I'm just seeing that Mr. Himanshu Yadav, who is the head of marketing Americas for TCS, has joined us in the audience. So, Mr. Yadav, we would love to have a question from you when we open for the audience. I'll come to you, Abraham. Now, travel is now increasingly being influenced by micro moments, from discovery on Instagram to last minute mobile bookings. How is Thomas Cook evolving its MarTech stack to drive not just visibility, but measurable conversion and lifetime value? What innovations that you're using are ROI positive?
So, Bridge, that's a good question. I think absolutely travel is now more inspired and more impulse driven than ever before. Uh, for a variety of reasons. One is sheer economic growth and the number of people who are now in the consumption class, especially for travel. And our focus largely being outbound travel, which is international travel. Actually, we are in a play of a very small percentage of the Indian population, right? So to us, it's very important to be engaged with this relatively small but large in number actually set of people on an ongoing basis because today travel is not even as seasonal as it used to be even as recently as 5 years ago. Earlier, it was typically seasonal. Summer holidays, especially for kids, was a peak, and then you had another one around Diwali, Christmas, New Year. But for the most part, otherwise, they weren't really big peaks in travel. Today, it's become a more 365 day phenomenon. Long weekends, for example, all see spikes. It's through the year, right? And different parts of the world see different, uh, travel groups traveling that way. So today, I think what's important is to be an active part of the inspiration journey, because as you said, the key is to quickly take somebody from the inspiration moment to the transaction moment. And what we are trying to do is really look at how we can expedite that. One, to be part of the inspiration itself, which is working with influencers, tourism boards, etc., to inspire travel and increasingly talk about experiences that one could have, which are different, cool, and flaunt worthy, if you will, because a lot of that inspires some level of research and then hopefully transaction. The second is try to be as focused on trying to get this with the minimum number of clicks. And a good example of what we're doing in that area is what we are doing in a beta phase right now on our website, which is thomascook.in. We have a generative AI chatbot called Daisy. She's still in test stage, but it's interesting because we have a fair amount of traffic going to the website. We found a lot of people browse but don't really fill an inquiry form or don't reach out. So what we're doing with Tesi is trying to get into conversations. And while we launched her just less than 24 hours ago yesterday, we've already had, more than 2,000 conversations, which Tesi has gotten to. Of course, some of them are very perfunctory, but a lot of them are fairly, deep and have led to a fair degree of qualified leads. So what we're trying to do is trying to look at how can we, uh, today a lot of traffic's being driven to websites, the traditional form of a lot of digital marketing. But what's not happening on that busy intersection called the homepage of the website is how do you really make it seamless for a customer to have a conversation? And today, this conversation, when you think about picking up the phone and calling somebody, most young Indians see it as cumbersome, painful. Somebody's going to save my number and keep, waking me up at 2 o'clock when I'm sleeping on Sunday afternoon. So instead, giving them a seemingly unobtrusive opportunity to converse with something like a generative AI chatbot, and effectively channel the qualified leads to us to follow up is a lot more efficient. So that's just one example of one of several initiatives that we are undertaking. Even on our website itself, we've started with a platform which helps you customize your holidays real time, checking availability real time, giving you pricing real time, and allowing you to customize without human interference. This was earlier not possible as recently as a year ago. So a lot of what we're doing is increasingly looking at a digital customer, having less of interference, less of distraction, and trying to make the journey from inspiration, and that inspiration can happen across at any moment. It could even be a dish they're eating, which you have a good cow soy, maybe that will inspire you to travel to a certain part of the world. So how can we make it easier for a digital first customer to go from that any point of inspiration to a transaction as seamlessly as possible? Ideally, given that people are as wary as they are about sharing their number and email, trying to allow them to discover as much as they can and reach out to us at a time and a place of their choice.
I'll open questions for the audience now, and I have one question from Arushi Mehta. She's a senior digital marketing manager. Her question is, what's the one skill you look for when hiring a marketer now? Let's start with you, Sudhanshu.
So that's a loaded question, and I think a lot of those responses we have given in parts and pieces. I think Chandan talked about that you should, as a requirement, you should be someone who can work in a collaborative environment. Initially, I talked about how AI first has become the approach. So someone having, you know, uh, AI fluency would definitely get preference. That's one skill we can't afford to miss. But while we can navigate all of that, uh, I think one thing which emerges that uh, our ability to use the tools and become superhuman is one thing which will translate us into winners, because there's so much tools available, and suddenly if you are able to use them right, you become most impactful, and your ability to create impact for the business increases. So if you're able to do all of these, definitely you'll be the one who will be ahead of the queue. And for sure, the other skills like learning on the fly, because it's changing every day and it's so uncertain at this point in time, that if you are able to navigate uncertainty, that's a softer skill. You'll get kind of know you'll get that is something that will get you ahead. And definitely tool agnostic is one aspect where you should be open to experiment with whatever comes and then use it to the maximum possible uses. Yeah, so those are some of the skills.
Okay, thank you. I hope your question is answered, Arushi. Next question is from Rohan, who is from Upgrad. He's manager growth marketing. Rohan asks, as consumers switch between screens and platforms constantly, how do you build a unified brand experience without being creepy or over intrusive with personalization? Mayuri, I'll give that to you.
I think that's where the marketer that you hired just now is going to come in handy, right? Because it is, I think, yes, firstly, of course, you know, getting consent based signals and only using consent based signals in a respectful manner. And principle that applies to you in life, please apply it to in marketing. Don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself. I think is basically the fundamental principle that I would go for. But having said that, how do you do that without, I understand it comes from the pressure of, making sure that a consumer converts, and hence we reach out to them again and again. All of those things, I think, if we are able to understand, and I think I spoke a little bit about it, if we build the right attribution models at the very beginning of it, it tells us at what point is the, if one of our people are, and I won't call them consumers because they don't really consume us, they interact with us, they are people. And so how do our people engage with us and what do they like? And I think to what we were talking about the respectful communication and letting them choose when they want to interact with us, right? Giving into the bias for action sometimes can actually work against us. Sometimes you have to give the power to the consumer by building immersive consumer experiences that add value to the consumer's life. And I think more and more brands are actually using the lot of power of AI and creativity to actually do that. If you build immersive consumer experiences where your brand value is stated out really clearly, their action will happen at the time of their choosing, not necessarily your choosing, but it will be more likely than otherwise.
Thank you. I'll take one more question. Um, this is from Samir Biral, who is from Advil Group. I'm not able to see which team he works in. The question is, in an age of performance marketing obsession, how do you balance short-term metrics with long-term brand building? I think that's a very good question, especially when a board wants quick wins. So I'll go to you, Mr. Mukherjee, for this.
Okay, well, it's a very good question, and we are always trying to sort of, balance these two things. From our perspective, if we were to prioritize one of the two, and this is, in the way we work, we sort of prioritize longer term brand building. In the sense that, brands, especially in FMCG, are important from the perspective that, we are in business when people come back to us again and again. And therefore, longer term brand meaningfulness and right kind of, salience of the brand, the right kind of relevance, the right kind of brand values, personality. And today, in an omni-channel, sort of a multi-channel experience, it's very important to have the same right tone of voice and the same personality of the brand experience also reflected in different channels. Otherwise, you will not have an unified brand, and you will have a brand which is kind of splittered and sort of broken into different pieces. So therefore, very, very important to keep that in mind. That's the route to growth. That's the route to profitability. That's the route to sort of, longer term loyalty and so on. So brand building is very, very important. And actually, from our standpoint, performance marketing actually multiplies brand building. So therefore, if you do proper performance marketing, with the right consumer at the right moment, targeted the right way, and if you can build the right elements around it, it can actually multiply your brand building, can bring a lot of short-term, of course, results and so on and so forth. Has also been done in a certain way in the yesteryears of the offline world through the right kind of promotions. Now, of course, the ecosystem and the width and the plinth of performance marketing is much bigger, much wider, many more tools, many more opportunities available, and therefore a good combination of the two is very important. It's also important not to lose sight of one over the other. So it's important to have the right foundation and go in for longer term brand building, really consumer centricity at its heart, or people centricity at its heart. And of course, making the most of all the different opportunities available to be able to tap into the consumer at the right moment, right time, right places, right need states, and so on and so forth, using the right modem of performance marketing.
Thank you. We are nearing closing time, and this takes me to the fun part of this this webinar session, and I have a few rapid fire questions if you guys don't mind. They are completely unrelated to this webinar, and I'll start with Sudhanshu. If you weren't fighting cyber threats, what would your dream alternate job be? And no tech allowed.
Yeah, so that would be fighting for the nation. So the frontier changes, but the purpose remains the same.
So from Quick Heal to Indian Army.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we are doing, but yeah, doing it differently.
Great. Mayuri, when you want a digital detox, what's the one app you refuse to delete?
I'm actually a very non-phone app off person. I have no problem digital detoxing. I have never had a problem digital detoxing. I'm a very much books person. So I actually on the weekends just don't even touch my phone if I don't have to.
Any book you would like to recommend to our audience?
I love all of William Dalrymple's books. So I love his current book on ancient India. I can't remember the title of it, but it's the most recent one, and how ancient India influenced the world. And there's some amazing mathematical stuff, and how Fibonacci was influenced by some of the mathematical principles that came out of India. So I love that book.
Wonderful. Chandan, if not Maggie, what's your ultimate 2-minute comfort food?
Well, it's Nescafe for me. It also can be made quite fast and could be drunk also quite fast. So that is my next go-to.
And Abraham, one travel destination that's completely overrated. And what's that one hidden gem that you would want to go to?
Overrated. I think given that I'm in the travel business and we work with almost every nation, I definitely don't want to decry
I can
any
understand that.
nation.
Can
Yeah,
understand.
so in the interest of diplomacy and my partners, I won't answer the first part. But I think hidden gem. I think every country has a lot of hidden gems. But I'd actually say Portugal. While a lot of Europe is talked about, Portugal is probably the most fantastic balance of natural, unaffected, warm people, great food, especially if you're non-vegetarian, and great beaches for those of you who are beach people.
Thank you. So, I'd conclude by saying, we talked about AI, personalization, ROI madness, the age-old battle between, brand and performance. And what stood out is, while we are all building stacks, what really matters is building skills, teams, trust. Uh, you know, I was just reading this fact. Over 63% of marketers in India say that their biggest challenge isn't tech, it's talent and integration. And I think that was loud and clear today. Tools can change, but mindset and agility are what will future-proof us. So thank you, Mayuri, Chandan, Abraham, and Sudhanshu for this wonderful panel. Thank you, audience, for those great questions. If you have any more questions, you can write to us. You can write to me directly, and I'll make sure that they are answered. Again, thank you so much, all of you, for joining.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for having
Bridge.
us, Bridge.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Greg.
having
Thank
us.
you for Thank you.
Thank you.